I shared the meat from my cafeteria tray with an underprivileged student. Yet she splashed her soup straight in my face in front of everyone. Seeing this, my childhood sweetheart was so furious she wanted to teach her a lesson for me. But instead of getting angry, I turned around and slapped my childhood sweetheart hard across the face. Because I had been reborn. In my previous life, my childhood sweetheart colluded with her cronies to frame my family's company, leaving me homeless and wandering the streets. What I never could have imagined, even in my dreams, was that the person who finally reached out to help me was Willow, the underprivileged student we had once bullied. But before I could repay her kindness, she passed away early from an illness she had developed during her years of hardship. I lived every day drowning in regret. After I died, I somehow returned to my high school cafeteria, to the very day when my childhood sweetheart and her friends egged me on to mess with Willow. Chapter 1. Come on, young Master Wong, go already. What? You can't take a joke? In a hazy daze, I heard a voice that was all too familiar. I slowly opened my eyes, and what greeted me was an equally familiar place, the high school cafeteria. Looking around, I gradually remembered what day this was. A day I would later recall again and again with overwhelming regret. But wasn't I supposed to be dead? Could this be what people see at the brink of death, the one day they regret the most? Replayed by the brain. I looked at Makoto, who was speaking, and when memories of my past life surfaced, a cold sneer rose in my heart. My thoughts drifted back to the third day after my family went bankrupt. Once the proud young master of the Wong family, I had been reduced to running a roadside barbecue stall, doing work I once wouldn't have spared a glance. A beautifully dressed, elegant middle-aged woman stopped in front of my stall, her eyes full of disdain as she said, well, isn't this young Master Wong selling barbecue now, are you? A fairly handsome man wrapped an arm around her slender waist and looked at me with the same contempt. Sophia, this is your old flame. Who would have thought he'd fall this far? The woman was Sophia, my ex-wife. The man beside her was Makoto, once my best friend. My parents' company had long been riddled with hidden problems. Sophia exploited my trust and transferred company assets, causing the cash flow to nearly collapse. All of this could still have been salvaged, but then my younger brother, Jack Wong, made a series of even more foolish moves. He handed all of the Wong Group's secrets to Sophia, and the entire corporation crumbled overnight. My parents and my brother were arrested. Although I was barely involved, I was still sentenced to probation. Only after the bankruptcy did I learn that Sophia and Makoto had been involved for a long time. Even the child we were raising wasn't mine, but Makoto's, and it wasn't just the two of them who came that day. Several of my former friends showed up as well. Are you all here for barbecue? I knew they had come to mock me, yet I could only force a smile. I knew I was their entertainment now. Just looking at your stall makes me sick, Sophia said, glaring at me with disgust. Maria, standing behind Sophia, joined in the ridicule. Exactly. If Sophia ate your barbecue, she'd end up straight in the ICU. One comment after another followed, all meant to belittle me. Watching my former friends treat me this way, I felt only bitterness, nothing more. With no special skills, once I lost my parents' support, I could only cling to life by running a roadside stall I used to look down on. Say, if we flip young Master Wong's barbecue stand, do you think he'll get mad? Makoto looked at me with contempt, a nasty grin on his face. I thought he was just talking, but to my surprise, everyone agreed. They overturned my stall on the spot. Several customers who were still eating were so frightened they ran off without even paying. After they had gone far away, I sat amid the wreckage, tears streaming uncontrollably down my face. Just then, the light before my eyes was blocked. Someone was standing in front of me. I thought it was Sophia and the others. But when I looked up, I met a pair of beautiful, peach blossom eyes filled with regret, tinged with unmistakable pain. Willow. I recognized the beautiful woman in front of me. Hey, Willow sighed softly as she looked at me. Come with me. Where to? I asked, startled. My place. After saying that, Willow took my hand and pulled me up from the ground. Willow had been the top student in our high school. But aside from studying, she wasn't good at socializing. She always walked with her head lowered, radiating a deep lack of confidence. Chapter 2. The only impression I had of her was from the first semester of my freshman year. Back then, I was playing truth or dare with a few drinking buddies, and I got picked 5 times in a row. According to the rules, I had to do a dare. Sophia told me to eat the pickles from Willow's lunch tray. Willow was the top student in our class, and also the poorest. Every meal, she ate a bowl of plain white rice that cost 40 cents, free pickled vegetables, and pickle soup. Because of that, she was always sallow and skinny. Willow's parents had died in a plane crash, so Sophia even gave her a cruel nickname, the Cursed Jinx, that only made Willow more withdrawn and insecure. and she naturally became a target for bullies. Although I never took part directly, I was a cold, indifferent bystander. As long as I had spoken up, Willow wouldn't have been bullied, but I chose to stand by and do nothing. Willow took me back to her villa. Besides the household staff, there was also a little girl about 10 years old. George, this is my cousin, Jessica. I was a bit surprised, because I remembered that Willow had no relatives, but I still nodded. After all, it was her family business. It wasn't my place to ask too many questions. In the days that followed, Willow brought me into her company, teaching me various skills and helping me expand my network. I couldn't understand why Willow was helping me. After my family's company collapsed, Willow's company was the only one that stayed in cooperation with us until the very end. Willow just smiled and said it was because of that piece of dark chocolate. I was instantly overwhelmed with guilt. Back during that dare, I had sat beside Willow. Under her startled gaze, I picked up a piece of pickled radish, but after only one look, I tossed it onto the ground and said to my group of cronies, "I lose. Dinner's on me tonight." Then I met Willow's wounded eyes, and I stuffed an expensive piece of chocolate into her pocket. That was the only time I ever hurt Willow, even if it was because of a dare. In the end, the fault was still mine. 2.5 years passed in the blink of an eye. I was basically able to take over all of Willow's company operations. Sophia and the others came to talk about cooperation again, but I rejected them all. They cursed me out, saying I really was a perfect match with a cursed jinx. Just as I was about to curse Sophia and the others back, I received a call from the hospital. After hearing it, I rushed there immediately and stopped outside the door of a VIP private room. "President Wong, Miss Lu's condition is very bad. You should go in and see her quickly." Willow's secretary, Lisa, hurried me inside when she saw me. "Willow." I walked into the room. Willow was half reclining on the hospital bed. Her face was extremely haggard, and she was typing something on her laptop. When she saw me, she quickly closed it, clearly not wanting me to see what she had been writing. "George, you're here. Sit down. How has the company been running lately?" Willow's health had suddenly deteriorated badly this year, so she handed the company over to me to manage. Chapter 3. Let's put the company aside for now. I sat by Willow's hospital bed and asked softly, "How are you feeling?" "The results aren't out yet, but I believe I'll be fine." Willow still smiled at me. Before I could say much more to her, Lisa called me outside, saying someone from the company was looking for me. I looked at Willow. She smiled and nodded, signaling for me to go take care of my work. I had already guessed it wasn't really about the company, so I asked, "Secretary Lisa, what is it?" "Mr. Wong, you're Miss Lu's husband, right?" As expected, Lisa didn't answer me directly. Instead, Willow Lu's attending physician stopped me. I was momentarily speechless. I thought of the times I'd get up in the middle of the night to use the bathroom and often see Willow sitting on the sofa, lost in thought. The moment she noticed me, she would hurry back to her room. The two of us were so close in distance, yet it felt as if we were worlds apart. "In Miss Lu's contacts," the doctor continued, "you're the only person listed under family, and her contact list only has 2 categories, family and others. How is Willow?" Not knowing how to answer, I could only ask about her condition first. "Mr. Wong, take a look." The attending physician handed me Willow's emergency imaging reports and said, "Miss Lu's condition is extremely serious. What we've found so far includes severe esophageal erosion with bleeding, acute atrophic gastritis accompanied by severe duodenal ulcers, mild small intestinal obstruction, colitis, acute proctitis, late-stage liver cirrhosis, severe emphysema, and acute glomerulonephritis. And this is only part of it. The blood test results aren't out yet. But with her organs failing like this, it doesn't look optimistic." His words sent me plunging into icy despair. Willow was only 2 days older than me. She wouldn't even be 30 for another month, and yet her body was already in such terrible shape. "Does Miss Lu usually smoke a lot?" the doctor asked. "Yes," I nodded. Willow's nicotine addiction was extreme, more severe than anyone I'd ever known. She smoked at least 3 packs a day, sometimes even 5. Whenever I called her to report on work, I could constantly hear the sound of her lighting cigarettes on the other end. Not only did Willow smoke heavily, she drank even more. She consumed large amounts of hard liquor every single day. I wanted to tell her to smoke less, to drink less, but I didn't know in what capacity I had the right to advise her. I couldn't understand how the once well-behaved girl from the past had developed such severe addictions to alcohol and cigarettes. "Miss Lu is already suffering from multiple organ failure." The doctor sighed and continued, "At most, she has about a week left. She was severely malnourished for a long time in the past, and it's likely she consumed a large amount of fermented and pickled foods, things like kimchi and pickled radish. Stay with Miss Lu as much as you can these next few days, doctor." Seeing him about to leave, I suddenly knelt in front of him and begged, "Please save Willow, no matter how much it costs. I'll pay." "Mr. Wong, please get up." The doctor immediately helped me to my feet. It's not that I don't want to save her. Miss Liu is already in multi-organ failure. There's nothing that can be done. I handed the reports to Lisa and instructed her not to tell Willow. As expected, when the blood test results came back, almost none of the indicators were normal. Willow seemed to be clinging to some kind of unresolved fixation, and it sustained her for another full month. But during that month, her body still deteriorated rapidly. By the time her 30th birthday arrived, she had grown so thin she was almost unrecognizable, sunken eyes, nothing but skin and bones. Still, I prepared a birthday cake for her. George. Willow looked at me, her voice weak and breathless. I'm only 2 days older than you. Let's celebrate our birthdays together. I was a little surprised. Willow actually remembered my birthday. She sang the birthday song with me, and with trembling hands, she cut a slice of cake for me. It was the first time we had ever celebrated a birthday together. In all the years before, on Willow's birthdays, she had never come back. Chapter 4. Thank you, Willow. I pressed a gentle kiss to her forehead before taking the cake from her hands. I saw a flicker of joy flash through Willow's eyes. It was the first time I had ever kissed her, and also the last. Willow held my hand tightly, staring at me as if she wanted to carve my face into the deepest part of her soul. Suddenly, her hand went limp. Her pupils gradually lost focus, followed by the cold warning sounds of the machines. Willow. I roared as I pulled her into my arms, but she gave no response. The doctors and nurses rushed to pull me away and began emergency resuscitation. But her body was already completely spent. There was nothing they could do. At Willow's funeral, aside from Lisa, I was the only one there. I looked at Willow lying in the coffin, tears falling like pearls from a broken string. A grown man doesn't cry easily, only because the sorrow hasn't reached its breaking point. Lisa's eyes were red and swollen. She handed me Willow's will and a letter, more accurately, a farewell letter, and told me that Willow had written them during her hospitalization. By then, Willow no longer had the strength to hold a pen. So she typed the letter on her computer first and sent it to Lisa, asking her to print it out and give it to me together with the will after her death. That was why Willow had hurriedly closed her laptop that day. She didn't want me to see that she was writing her farewell letter. In the will, Willow left all her property to me, but the farewell letter struck me like a thunderbolt from a clear sky. Jessica was Willow's biological daughter. She had been conceived when Willow was 19, after she was drugged by Sophia while working a part-time job, and then assaulted by Makoto. I burned with the desire to kill Makoto. But seeing Willow's wish for me to raise Jessica, I had no choice but to suppress that urge. Jessica looked very much like Willow, especially those beautiful peach blossom eyes. They were identical. After returning to the villa, I opened the room Willow had always kept locked. The moment I saw what was inside, I was completely stunned. The room was filled with information about me. Only then did I learn that Willow and I had attended the same university, University B. The difference was that I had gotten in with money, while Willow had earned her place through exams. There were records of my life from my first year of high school all the way through university. I had always thought that Willow's feelings for me began with the chocolate I gave her during that dare, but in truth, it had started much earlier. In the very center of a drawer, I found the chocolate I had casually tossed to Willow back then. She had never eaten it. Beneath the chocolate was a photo album containing only a single picture. I recognized it immediately. It was taken at the south gate of University B on the day I graduated, when I was wearing my bachelor's gown. Judging from the angle, it had clearly been taken secretly. Beneath the photo was a line of words. George, when I'm finally qualified to stand beside you, will you love me just once? Willow had always kept a diary. Her very first diary entry in high school read, "There's a classmate in our class named George. He's really handsome. It's a pity we live in completely different worlds. I have to work hard, so that one day, I can meet him at the very top." Nearly half of the entries that followed were about me. The chocolate I gave her, the graduation photo we took together, the diaries after high school recorded her relentless studying. Even the assault by Makoto was mentioned only briefly. After graduating from university, she had to start a business and raise Jessica at the same time. So she lived on pickled vegetables every day just to save more money. On the day her company went public, she was so excited she didn't sleep at all that night. When she wrote about my family's bankruptcy, her words were full of pain for me, and that was how everything that followed came to be. After I moved into her home, Willow stopped writing in her diary altogether. But 2 months before her death, as if she sensed something, she wrote on the bottom right corner of the last page, "George, if there is a next life, could you look at me one more time, even if it's just once?" My heart completely died. I collapsed in the study, numb and empty. Until Jessica's teacher called me, only then did I find a reason to keep living. Jessica was Willow's daughter, so I would raise her properly. For the next 15 years, I played both father and mother, raising Jessica. I poured all my longing for Willow and all my guilt into her. watching her enter middle school, then high school, then university, start working, and finally get married. That was enough for me. At the same time, I destroyed the companies of Sophia, Makoto, Simon, Maria, and the rest. I had once run with them, so I knew exactly where their weaknesses lay. I never told Jessica about her relationship with Willow. For her, that truth would have been far too cruel. 15 years later, after Jessica got married at the age of 25 to the person she loved and who loved her in return, I handed the entire company over to her. By then, I was already gravely ill. Though I was only 45, I looked like a man in his 70s. I heard the doctor's helpless sigh, followed by the sound of Jessica and Lisa crying. I knew my time was up. In a daze, I seemed to see Willow standing by my hospital bed, smiling at me. I felt no fear. I accepted death calmly. Willow, I'm coming to be with you. Chapter 5. My thoughts came back around. I looked at Willow, who was eating in silence, and my heart felt unexpectedly light. In this life, I would make up for everything I owed Willow. The people around me were still hurling insults at Willow. I sneered inwardly. Staying with people like this, it was no wonder my previous life ended the way it did. Amid the crowd's jeers, I picked up my tray and sat down beside Willow. She stared at me in shock, her eyes full of grievance and anger, tears seemingly about to spill from the corners. I took the chopsticks from Willow's hand, picked up a piece of pickled radish from her tray, and put it into my mouth. Salty, absurdly salty. How had Willow managed to eat this every single day? I nearly spat it out. But when I thought of how Willow had lived on this in my previous life, I forced myself to swallow despite the discomfort. Willow, this has no nutrition at all. Eat some meat instead. Seeing the anger in her eyes, I transferred all the meat from my own plate onto hers. Willow was sallow and emaciated now. Nothing but skin and bones, clearly the result of long-term malnutrition. There was nothing strange about it. Anyone who ate food like this every day would end up malnourished. George, you've gone way too far. Willow sprang to her feet in anger. She grabbed the bowl of pickled vegetable soup and splashed all of it onto my face. Amid the gasps from those around us, she burst into tears and ran out of the cafeteria. Everyone was stunned. I was notorious for my explosive temper, yet Willow had dared to throw soup in my face. I wasn't angry at all. Watching her retreating figure, what I felt was guilt, far more than anything else. George, that jinx actually dared to splash you. Want us to help you teach her a lesson? Looking at the fair-weather friends crowding around me, I finally saw through what they really were. I don't want anything to do with you anymore. Stop bothering me. After saying that, I ran out of the cafeteria to chase after Willow, but I couldn't find Willow anywhere on the sports field. All I could do was wait until afternoon classes. During class, my gaze never left Willow. George, that bitch actually dared to splash you. Sophia thought I was angry and laughed. After school, we'll help you get revenge. Bitch? Hearing that word, I shot a cold glance at Sophia beside me. She was startled by my look and didn't dare say anything more. She still assumed I was angry because of Willow. At long last, class ended. I walked over to Willow. Because of her personality, no one wanted to sit near her, so she never had a desk mate. Her eyes were still swollen and red. It was obvious she had been crying for a long time. When she saw me, a flash of fear crossed her eyes. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have splashed you at lunch, Willow said quickly, thinking I was about to hit her. Although I wasn't a delinquent, every delinquent was afraid of me. Seeing her like this made my heart ache. I explained gently, Willow, I'm not blaming you. In the future, could I ask you about things I don't understand? She clearly hadn't expected me to say that and could only stare at me in a daze. I'm sorry, I don't want to have anything to do with you. After a long pause, Willow finally spoke, her voice returning to its usual cold distance. I was momentarily taken aback, but I understood how she felt. I placed that chocolate from my previous life onto Willow's desk. Chapter 6. Over the following week, aside from paying close attention in class, I gave Willow a piece of chocolate every day, the same kind as in my previous life. But she didn't eat a single one. She placed all of them on the windowsill beside her. My drinking and feasting buddies all asked what kind of madness had possessed me lately, hovering around a jinx and even starting to study seriously. The truth was, I had attended middle school in another city, so I hadn't mixed with people from Sophia's circle back then. My grades in middle school were excellent. Otherwise, I wouldn't have gotten into this school at all. But after entering high school and getting involved with these people, my academic performance began to plummet. I was grateful that I had been reborn at the start of the second semester of sophomore year. If it had been senior year, things would have been far more troublesome. Still, every time I saw Willow look at me with cold eyes and speak in a distant tone, my heart ached deeply. That afternoon after school, Sophia suddenly blocked me at the stairwell. George, what exactly are you trying to do these days? Why are you always hanging around that jinx? Don't you know getting close to her will bring you bad luck? Shut up, Sophia. What right do you have to talk about her? I restrained the urge to slap her. George, don't you love me anymore? Why are you defending her? Sophia hugged me directly. I was about to push her away when I looked up and met Willow's gaze. Willow didn't say a word. She didn't even look back at us. She simply walked around the two of us and continued forward. Willow. I shoved Sophia aside with force, knocking her to the ground. Ignoring her cry of surprise, I ran after Willow and grabbed her arm. George, what are you doing? Let go of me. Willow tried to pull her arm free, but she was very weak. On her face, beyond disgust, I saw even more fear. Willow, there's really nothing between Sophia and me. Don't misunderstand. Willow burst into tears, saying, I'm not interested in your affairs. Please don't use me as a bargaining chip. Willow, I wanted to say I like you, but it felt far too abrupt, so I changed my words. I really want to help you. George, stop messing with me. Willow angrily yanked her arm back, took 2 steps away, and looked at me coldly. Whatever goes on between rich people like you, don't drag me into it. Thank you. With that, she turned and left without looking back. I didn't follow her. Instead, I shot Sophia an angry glance. She still hadn't gotten up, probably because I'd pushed her too hard. Sophia, stop clinging to me. If you don't blame me for being rude. That very day, I went to the homeroom teacher's office and said I wanted to sit with Willow so she could help explain problems to me. The teacher was a bit surprised, but she agreed. After all, my family often gave her gifts, so she was willing to do me this small favor. The next day, I moved my things next to Willow. She immediately shot me a cold look. Willow, from now on I'm your desk mate. Please take care of me, I said. Seeing that she still stared at me coldly, I asked again, Willow, why are you always like this with me? Because I hate you. After saying that, Willow went back to working on her practice book, ignoring me completely. It felt as though my heart were being crushed into pieces. But when I thought of everything Willow had done for me in my previous life, and of her secret love that lasted from 15 to 27, this little bit of pain was nothing at all. Chapter 7. Over the next month, I kept sticking close to Willow, asking her all kinds of questions. Her attitude toward me gradually shifted, from cold and distant to that of an ordinary classmate. I also completely cut ties with those fair-weather friends and stopped paying them any attention. For that entire month, I followed Willow after school every day, watching her until she entered her apartment building. One day, just like usual, I followed Willow. When we reached the entrance of a small alley, she turned around and looked at me. George, what exactly are you trying to do? It's been a whole month. Haven't you had enough fun yet? My heart sank a little. Willow actually thought I had been playing with her all this time. I'm not playing with you, Willow. I'm serious. Gritting my teeth, I finally spoke from my heart. I really like you. Please believe me. Willow stared at me in disbelief. I caught a fleeting trace of joy in her eyes, but it was quickly replaced by anger. George, I know you're just upset with Sophia, but it's already been more than a month. I really don't want to keep acting this out with you. Tomorrow, go sit with Sophia and stop bothering me. What do I have to do for you to believe me? I grabbed the sleeve of Willow's clothes. Kneel. After saying that, Willow pulled her sleeve free and turned to leave. Thud. I didn't hesitate for a second. I dropped to my knees behind her. Willow, I'm begging you, don't go. Willow turned around in shock. I knew she thought I was just messing with her. She never expected me to actually kneel. George, don't do this. Get up, quickly. Willow was clearly flustered and hurried over to help me up. Willow, I'm sincere. I seized the moment and wrapped my arms around her slender waist, one I could encircle with a single hand. The familiar scent from my previous life lingered on her. Willow was so soft, holding her felt unbelievably comforting. I really wanted to hold her a little longer. Her cheeks flushed bright red, but she finally let down her guard. No, high school is for studying. I can explain problems to you, but I absolutely won't accept any other thoughts from you. Okay, I nodded solemnly. This was already a good start. From that day on, my relationship with Willow gradually improved. She was no longer as cold and distant toward me as before. Sometimes, I could even catch a rare smile on her face, and she no longer seemed so gloomy around me. I knew Willow liked lamb, so every day I had the cook at home prepare different lamb dishes for her. At lunchtime, I stopped letting Willow go to the cafeteria to live on scraps and meager fare. Every noon, I handed her a prepared lunchbox and told her it was my thank you for helping me with my studies. In this life, I was determined to help Willow take good care of her health. In my previous life, she had been riddled with illnesses, many of them stemming from eating pickled vegetables every day while she was still growing. With Willow's tutoring, plus my memories from my past life, my ranking in the final exams of sophomore year's second semester jumped from the bottom, barely above 50th place, to somewhere in the 20s. Willow was truly suited to be a teacher. She could quickly pinpoint where my problems were and then tailor the right method to fix them. After the final grades were released that semester, Willow invited me to visit where she lived. Naturally, I was delighted. Willow's home was a full 6 kilometers away from school, and she walked to and from school every day. I had often accompanied her after school before, so the route was already familiar to me. She lived in an apartment funded by some entrepreneur, housing specifically for orphans. Rent was only 100 yuan a month. Relying on this temporary place to live and 600 yuan a month in subsistence allowance, Willow barely managed to survive. Probably because she lived in a 6-person unit. We just chatted for a while in the corridor. Chapter 8. Willow, how about you come live at my place in the future? Seeing her shocked expression and her cheeks flushing red, I realized she had misunderstood, so I quickly added, don't worry, my house has plenty of rooms. Thank you, but there's really no need. Willow declined. During summer vacation, I often asked Willow to take walks with me in the park near where she lived. She never refused my invitations, perhaps because I was the only one who didn't reject her. Just like in my previous life, that bag of chocolate I gave her, something I had tossed to her casually, she ended up treasuring for 15 whole years. 1 week before the new semester started, on a moonless night, Willow and I finished dinner and were walking by the lake when more than a dozen people suddenly blocked our path. George, what's wrong with you this semester? Sophia looked at me, her tone tinged with anger. Just for this jinx, you stopped talking to us, and what's more, don't you love me anymore? None of your damn business. I immediately pulled Willow behind me and said coldly, and I never loved you in the first place. Stop being so self-important. George, sticking with this disaster bringer, aren't you afraid she'll pass her bad luck on to you? Makoto chimed in angrily. Exactly. Sophia grew up with you, and yet you're treating her like this just for this jinx, Maria added. Staring at me, I felt the person behind me grab my hand, her body trembling uncontrollably. I looked at Willow. She wasn't looking at me, but I could still see tear marks on her cheeks. Calling her a disaster every other word, trash like you don't deserve to judge anyone, I shouted as I squeezed Willow's soft, boneless hand. Don't ever show up in front of me again. Seeing you makes me sick. With that, I pulled Willow along and walked past them. They were all cowards at heart. With me standing beside Willow, none of them dared to do anything. In the past, they would have already started bullying Willow in every possible way. But now, as long as I was around, that would never happen again. Thinking of how Willow had been framed by Sophia and Makoto together back in college in my previous life, the hatred I felt toward the two of them deepened even further. In this life, I would definitely find a chance to make those two scumbags pay the price. Why? Only after we had walked far away did Willow finally look at me and ask, yet she still didn't pull her left hand out of mine. I looked at her and asked in return, why what? Why are you treating me so well now? Willow seemed to recall something, a trace of sadness flashing through her beautiful eyes. You never bullied me before, but we also didn't have much interaction, so why now? I understood why Willow was asking. It wasn't just that she couldn't understand why someone who had barely interacted with her would treat her like this, it was also because she truly believed I wasn't approaching her just to spite Sophia and the others. Willow, I looked seriously into her beautiful peach blossom eyes. You once said that if there were a next life, you wondered whether you could look at me just one more time. Willow frowned slightly, clearly not believing my words. George, if there's anything you don't understand in the future, just ask me. I'll definitely explain it carefully. After saying that, Willow pulled her hand free and walked in the direction of her home. Chapter 9. I could feel Willow struggling to hold back her emotions, watching her lonely figure fade into the distance. I didn't chase after her. If it were me, I probably wouldn't be able to accept something like this right away either, but I could wait. In my previous life, Willow had waited from 15 to 27, striving all the time just to meet me at my peak, so I could wait for Willow too, wait until she was able to accept me. Just as I was about to turn around and leave, I suddenly saw several people dragging Willow into the bushes nearby. Bitch, so you're the one seducing George, huh? Before I could even get close, I heard Sophia's shrill curses, followed by the sharp sounds of repeated slaps. Rage surged through me, and I quickened my pace. Say something, bitch. What? Are you mute? Then I heard Maria's voice as well. I understood immediately. They didn't dare do anything to me, so they were venting all their spite on Willow instead. Sure enough, when I reached the bushes, I saw Makoto and Simon holding Willow down on either side. While Sophia and Maria kept slapping her face, the others stood around, jeering and egging them on. Willow kept her head lowered, silently enduring the blows without begging for mercy. I shoved my way through the crowd. Sophia looked startled when she saw me, but in the very next second, my fist smashed into the right side of her face. I had trained my body since childhood, and my strength was enormous, especially when I lost control. That punch held nothing back. Sophia's body flew several meters like a kite with its string cut. She spat out a mouthful of blood, mixed with several broken teeth. Maria was clearly terrified out of her wits. I followed up with a vicious kick to her lower abdomen. She immediately clutched her stomach and collapsed to the ground, writhing in agony. Makoto was taken down by a knee strike, while Simon, sensing danger, turned and ran without hesitation. I was just about to chase after Simon when a warm, soft hand suddenly grabbed my wrist. Only then did I regain a bit of my sanity and look down at Willow lying on the ground. Her face was already swollen and red, blood trickling from the corner of her mouth. When she saw me looking at her, Willow shook her head. Her voice was extremely weak. "George, I want to go home." "Okay." I lifted Willow into my arms. She instinctively wrapped her arms around my neck, resting her body against my chest. Not a single onlooker dared to stop me. Only a few who had snapped back to their senses hurriedly called an ambulance. "Willow, I'm sorry I dragged you into this," I said softly as I looked down at her in my arms. "No." Willow shook her head. "It's not your fault. If it weren't for you, it would have been even worse for me. People like them took pleasure in bullying others. In my previous life, I had watched them torment one classmate after another, never stepping in, treating it all like a show. I had never once considered how utterly innocent the victims truly were." Chapter 10. I had just taken Willow back to her place when the building manager uncle told her to hurry up and pack. She had to move out that very night and could no longer stay there. After saying that, the manager looked at her with deep guilt. He truly pitied this homeless girl, but he couldn't disobey the young lady's orders. He told us that this apartment building was an investment by Sophia's family, and that Sophia had just called and ordered him to kick Willow out. In my previous life, Sophia hadn't known Willow lived here, but in this life, because of my frequent contact with Willow, Sophia started investigating her and discovered that she was living in an apartment funded by her own family, so she had the manager throw Willow out. "It's okay, Willow, you can live at my place," I said. Seeing that Willow was still hesitating, I added, "I won't do anything to you, and I still need you to tutor me in my academic subjects." In the end, after my repeated insistence, Willow agreed. I had the housekeeper clean out a room for her. She used to live in a 6-person dorm with bunk beds. Now, Willow finally had a room of her own. The housekeeper even teased me, asking whether Willow was my girlfriend. I replied that she wasn't, she was my future wife. Hearing that, the housekeeper immediately broke into a knowing smile and, just like last semester, started preparing an extra portion of food at every meal. My parents were rarely home, but worried that I might miss them. They still video called me every week. I told them that I had a homeless friend staying at my place for a while, and they didn't object. The next day, the police came to our door and took both Willow and me to the station. The previous night, I had knocked out 5 teeth on the right side of Sophia's mouth and caused a minor fracture in her right arm. Maria had suffered a mild rupture of the spleen, and Makoto had lost 7 front teeth. Sophia and Makoto were sitting on chairs at the station. Maria wasn't there. She was probably recovering in the hospital. The police had already reviewed the surveillance footage and confirmed that I was acting to save someone, and that I hadn't done anything further after the rescue. They only required me to cover all the medical expenses. I took out a bank card and flicked it onto Makoto's face, warning the two of them, "If either of you ever dares to touch Willow again, just try it." They knew they couldn't afford to provoke me and could only accept the money and let the matter end there. Although Willow and I hadn't officially confirmed our relationship, and I knew that high school Willow still prioritized her studies, she tacitly allowed me to hold her hand and put an arm around her shoulders. The gloomy aura that once surrounded Willow had completely disappeared. She was no longer sullen every day and was gradually stepping out of her self-imposed isolation. All of this made me feel deeply relieved. In my previous life, it was probably under this kind of constant pressure and loneliness that Willow had developed a severe addiction to cigarettes and alcohol. Willow had already had feelings for me. With my efforts, a seed of love quietly took root in our hearts, and in the future, it would surely blossom and bear fruit. Chapter 11. In the new semester, Sophia, Makoto, and the others wisely applied to transfer classes, probably to avoid me. Maria went even further and directly applied to study from home for a year. The rest of them scattered like frightened birds, and no one dared to provoke Willow again. As expected, no matter who they were dealing with, those people were nothing but fair-weather friends, each flying their own way when trouble came. They were never worth associating with. Willow once asked me whether someone with a background like hers would become a burden to me in the future. I held Willow's hand, looked into her beautiful peach blossom eyes, and told her solemnly that only cowards would ever see the person they cherished most as a burden. September 9th was Willow's birthday. I bought her the latest model phone with the best configuration as her birthday gift. "Willow, happy birthday. This is your birthday present." It happened to be Sunday. After breakfast, I handed the gift box to her. "Thank you, George." Willow took the box and looked at me. "Your birthday is in 2 days. Why don't we celebrate together?" "How do you know my birthday?" I wrapped an arm around Willow's shoulder and looked at her. Her cheeks flushed slightly. She turned her head away and said, "Ah, that's a secret for now." "All right, Willow, open it and see if you like it. As long as it's from you, I'll like it." Willow didn't open the box right away. She just smiled at me. Hearing that, I couldn't help but laugh softly. Was this really the Willow who used to be stone-faced and only knew how to bury herself in books? But with memories of my previous life, I knew clearly, last year, Sophia and the others had celebrated my birthday for me. That was when Willow found out. Thinking of what Sophia would do later in my previous life made my stomach churn with disgust. Urged on by me, Willow finally opened the gift box. When she saw what was inside, she froze. "This is way too expensive." Willow tried to hand the phone back to me. "Thank you, but I really can't accept such a gift." "Willow, I bought this phone for you." I took a step back. Seeing that she was about to say more, I quickly soothed her. "If you think it's too expensive, then just treat it as me lending it to you. Otherwise, you don't even have a phone. How am I supposed to contact you?" In the end, it was only after my repeated insistence that Willow accepted it. After lunch, I took Willow to a service center to get a SIM card. Unexpectedly, we ran into Sophia and Makoto there. Sure enough, without me around, the two of them naturally ended up together, 11 years earlier than in my previous life. Holding Willow's hand, I completely ignored them, probably still scared from the last time I beat them up. Sophia and Makoto obediently made way for us. While Willow was getting the card processed, I could feel a gaze fixed on me the entire time. I followed it, and my eyes met Sophia's. Sophia immediately looked away, pretending nothing had happened. After that, I helped Willow register accounts on all the social media apps, and on every single one of them, her very first friend was me. Chapter 12. In this life, Willow no longer lived on pickled vegetables every day. After these past few months, her complexion had grown rosy and healthy. She was no longer skin and bones like before. Her figure had finally returned to normal. Because of Willow, high school life felt full and meaningful. During class, I had grown used to holding Willow's soft hand. At first, she felt very uncomfortable with it, but over time, she got used to it. Only when Willow needed to take notes would I let go of her hand. However, once Willow finished taking notes, she would take the initiative to place her hand back into mine, allowing me to hold it. Her hand was really so soft. Once I held it, I never wanted to let go. Every time, though, Willow's face would flush red, like clouds lit by fire at sunset, bright and beautiful. She was already stunning, and this only made her even more captivating. Willow's grades remained firmly at the top of the class. No one had ever been able to shake her position. Many classmates wanted to borrow her notes. After all, they were the notes of a top student, bound to be helpful. But aside from me, Willow never lent her notes to anyone. Her notes were clearly structured, and for my sake, she even carefully marked which points were likely to be tested and which were common pitfalls. Later, after we got married, Willow told me, "Because they're all your competitors." Of course I couldn't lend them my notes. My grades still hadn't reached Willow's level. But in every exam during the first semester of senior year, I managed to return to the standard I had when I first entered the school, steadily ranking between 5th and 10th in the class. For someone who had ranked over 50th in the final exam of freshman year's first semester, this was already remarkable. Still, I felt unwilling to settle. I wanted to go to the same university as Willow. Willow's goal was the same as in my previous life, University B in our city, majoring in strategic finance. In my previous life, she had studied that very major at University B. I also tried hard to get my parents to straighten things out, but they ignored me completely. In the end, I could only give up, since my parents' company was destined to collapse. Then before that happened, I had to put both my life and Willow's life on the right track, give her a stable, reassuring home, and never allow the tragedy of her dying from multiple organ failure at 29, like in my previous life, to happen again. The 3 years of high school passed in the blink of an eye. Sophia, Makoto, Maria, Simon, and the others rarely appeared in my life anymore. Even when we did run into each other, we treated one another like strangers. Willow and I were assigned to the same examination room for the college entrance exam, which made me incredibly happy. After finishing the English exam and stepping out of the room, I confessed to Willow once again. When she didn't respond immediately, I thought she was going to reject me, but when I looked at her, I saw tears welling in her eyes. Seeing me look at her, Willow nodded slightly and threw herself into my arms. I felt my clothes at the shoulder grow wet with her tears as I held her even tighter. In my previous life, how foolish I had been to miss out on such a precious girl who loved me so deeply. Fortunately, heaven gave me a second chance. The onlookers around us burst into applause. When it was time to take graduation photos, I openly held Willow's hand, unconcerned about anyone else's gaze. My parents specially returned to attend my graduation ceremony. As expected, they were very dissatisfied with Willow. When I continued to insist on being with her, they looked at me with disappointment. Just as I had anticipated, they gave up on grooming me as their successor and instead began cultivating my younger brother, Jack, who was a year younger than me. I didn't really care. I might not become the heir, but there was still more than enough money, enough to cover the living expenses for Willow and me throughout our 4 years of college. My college entrance exam score was more than 30 points lower than Willow's. Still, I was fortunate that my score met the cutoff for University B's strategic finance major as a second-choice admission. The tuition was 3 times that of the first-choice track, but being able to enter the same major as Willow was already more than good enough. Before the new semester started, I once again wore down the administration through persistence and persuasion, until they finally placed Willow and me in the same class. Chapter 13. During military training, some classmates teased me, "Bro, you moved fast, already landed our department bell." Hearing that, I was momentarily stunned. Department bell? Willow wouldn't exactly go out of her way to claim a title like that. The guy looked at me in shock. "You don't know. Your girlfriend is the finance school's department bell. Her votes are more than double the second place." Seeing my continued confusion, he took out his phone, opened the ranking page, and showed it to me. Willow's votes were far ahead, but when I saw the names in second and third place, I frowned slightly. It was Maria and Sophia. Memories from my previous life resurfaced, and I made up my mind once again. In this life, I would protect Willow no matter what. Willow and I changed the profile pictures and background images on all our social media accounts to photos of the two of us together. Originally, I wanted to give Willow a monthly allowance for living expenses, but I was afraid it would make her feel inferior. At the same time, I didn't want her to go out and work part-time anymore. So I went to the academic advisor and gave her a sum of money, asking her to transfer it into Willow's bank account each month under the name of a need-based student subsidy. After that, in the name of an orphan support association, I paid Willow's tuition for all 4 years of college. I asked the advisor to keep all of this confidential. In this life, I didn't want Willow to go out and do part-time jobs anymore. Just like in high school, Willow continued to bury herself in her studies every day. I knew she felt that she still wasn't good enough for me, which was why she was pushing herself so hard to improve. I stayed by her side the entire time, because I knew that in this life, I couldn't rely on my family alone. My roommates joked, "This looks like a fake relationship," and I just smiled without saying anything, because I hadn't told them that Willow and I were already preparing to move out and live together. Just yesterday, we had picked out a 1-bedroom apartment on campus, conveniently located near both the cafeteria and the classrooms. Just like that, freshman year passed quickly. Although Maria, Sophia, and the others were in the same major as me, they were in different classes, and we didn't run into each other even once that entire year. One day, when Willow was on her period, I went to the first cafeteria to buy her some brown sugar ginger tea. Suddenly, I was stopped by several people. "Do you need something? If not, move aside," I said irritably when I saw it was Sophia and her group. "Good dogs don't block the road. Can we talk?" Makoto spoke first. "What do I have to talk about with you?" I said, trying to walk around them. "Are you really going to stay with Willow?" Sophia blocked my way and asked, "You know Uncle and Auntie have already started grooming Jack." "I know," I replied, looking at Sophia as if she were an idiot. "And besides, whatever happens in the Wong family is none of your damn business." "George Wong, are you stupid?" Maria asked. "Do you realize you're about to lose your inheritance rights?" "I know. I'm not interested in the inheritance, and I know exactly what you're after. Don't bother me again." I shoved Makoto aside hard and headed into the cafeteria. In my previous life, I had been intoxicated by Sophia's looks, letting them slowly and subtly infiltrate the company, transferring all the funds overseas bit by bit. My parents' long-standing dishonest business practices were also exposed by Jack. Just like that, the once mighty Wong family collapsed overnight. But I knew that Sophia and the others were merely catalysts, accelerating a downfall that was destined to happen anyway. The current Wong family was nothing more than a hot potato. Since Jack wanted it, he could have it. Chapter 14. In my sophomore year, Jack also got into my university. To be precise, just like Sophia and Makoto, he got in entirely through money. His score was more than 300 points below even the B-track cutoff. Students who entered this way were all assigned to a preparatory program. Aside from military training, they didn't attend classes together with the regular A-track and B-track students who had gotten in through exams. Those in the preparatory program who performed well could still obtain a regular university degree. But if their performance was poor, their degree certificate would be specially marked with the words preparatory program. Under my influence, Willow gradually began interacting with people other than me and slowly made new friends of her own. After freshman year military training, I had pulled her into student clubs so she could practice communicating with others. In my previous life, she had probably learned how to interact with people through part-time jobs. In this life, I wanted to stay by her side and help her learn, step by step, how to get along with others. More importantly, I wanted to help her avoid the calamity she had faced at 19 in my previous life. But because this time I was with Willow Lu, many things changed. The year she turned 19 passed peacefully, and nothing serious happened. One time in sophomore year, we went together to a club gathering. Because I had forgotten something at our rented place, I told Willow to go ahead with the others first. As soon as I reached the private room, I heard voices coming from inside. Senior Lu, you and Senior Wang really have such a great relationship. Yeah, when you look at each other, your eyes are full of love. I've liked George for almost 5 years. Willow's voice followed. I always thought it would be impossible for us, but I never expected we'd actually end up together. I love George very much. He's my entire world. Hearing her words moved me deeply. Such a wonderful girl, she belonged only to me. When I pushed the door open, Willow and I locked eyes in each other's gaze. There was no one else, only our reflections. After dinner, we played Truth or Dare with a group of young people together. Most of the questions revolved around love and relationships. Willow drew Truth, and someone asked her, Senior Lu, between you and Senior Wang, who fell for the other first? Willow glanced at me and smiled. Of course I fell for Senior Wang first because of him. My once gray world gained color. The private room instantly erupted into cheers and teasing. I understood what Willow meant. The old Willow had lived in a self-enclosed world, and I had been the one to lead her out of it, bringing her hope. When Willow later drew Dare, someone, no one knew who started it, said, Senior Lu, how about you give Senior Wang a kiss? The room erupted into cheers once again. Willow's face flushed bright red. I gently lifted her chin, and amid her startled gaze, pressed my lips against her soft, glistening ones. It wasn't our first kiss, but it was the first time we kissed in front of so many people. At first, I could clearly feel Willow's resistance under the hand I had around her waist, but soon her body softened. She wrapped her arms around my neck and gradually began responding to my kiss. When the kiss ended, Willow's face was burning red as she leaned weakly against my chest. Senior Wang, when you and Senior Lu get married, you have to invite us. Of course, I said with a smile and a nod. You'll definitely receive an invitation then. Chapter 15. In my junior year, Willow was elected president of the club. She had already learned how to talk to all kinds of people. When I asked her for her secret, her answer was simple and blunt. Talk like a human to humans, talk like a ghost to ghosts, and talk nonsense to those who are neither human nor ghost. That said, Willow's role as president was more honorary than anything else. She still spent most of her time studying with me in our rented apartment and rarely involved herself deeply in club affairs. As a beautiful top student, Willow naturally attracted many people to join the club. After we started living together, we stopped going to the library and studied exclusively at the apartment. I didn't have Willow's level of self-discipline. Whenever I couldn't focus, I would go prepare fruit for her instead. On the very day I was reborn, afraid that I might forget, I saved all of Willow's ideas and plans from her previous life onto my computer, using the most secure encryption. In the future, after Willow finished graduate school, if she decided to start a business, I could hand everything to her directly. Because our birthdays were only 2 days apart, we celebrated together every year. I originally wanted to fix the celebration on Willow's birthday, but she insisted on taking turns, 1 year hers, the next year mine. Even though I gave Willow a generous amount of money every month, she remained extremely frugal. She didn't like luxury brands and didn't care for makeup. Aside from a bottle of sunscreen, a bottle of aloe gel, and 2 lipsticks, there was nothing else on her vanity. She saved most of the money and, during holidays and festivals, always prepared gifts for me with great care. Jack often provoked me deliberately. He had clearly integrated himself into Sophia and Makoto's circle. I knew how rotten that circle was, so I was actually looking forward to the day Jack would end up with nothing. I would still support my parents in the future, but as for Jack, if I didn't kick him while he was down, that would already be merciful. In my previous life, it was precisely this idiot. The moment Sophia used a honey trap, he spilled all the company's secrets without hesitation. Coupled with the financial records I had foolishly provided, the Wang Group collapsed overnight. Seeing that I still insisted on staying with Willow, my parents completely gave up on me. Aside from what I was entitled to, they had entirely removed me from the core management of the Wang Group. I didn't want Willow to worry, so from beginning to end, I never told her about any of this. I loved Willow deeply. Telling her wouldn't solve anything. It would only make her anxious about my situation. Even though we were already living together, we never crossed the final line. We both wanted to save our first time for our wedding day. During college, there were occasionally people who tried to ask Willow for her contact information when I wasn't around. Every time, Willow would refuse. For example, she would point at me standing not far away in line buying breakfast and tell the guy asking for her contact, "That's my boyfriend, and the person I love most." All of this was told to me later by our roommates. Chapter 16. I was also prepared to break away from the Wang family. I told Willow about my plan to start my own business and that I would no longer be able to inherit the Wang Group. Willow gently kissed my lips and said, "Whether you can inherit the Wang Group or not, I'll always love you." Time flew by, and soon it was senior year. I knew Willow wanted to continue her studies, so I suggested that she take the postgraduate entrance exam. After thinking it over for a long time, she finally nodded. In my previous life, Willow had written in her diary that she wanted to pursue a master's degree, but she didn't have the money and could only start working first. I also planned to establish my company in City A, following the same path Willow had taken in her previous life. During the winter break of senior year, Willow was admitted to the graduate program at University B, but as a part-time postgraduate student. Surprised, I asked her why. Her answer was simple: "You're starting a business, and you'll need someone by your side. If I were a full-time postgraduate student, I wouldn't have time to be with you." I pulled Willow into my arms, tears spilling uncontrollably. Whether in my previous life or this one, she had always thought of me first. When it came time to take graduation photos in senior year, I asked Willow to go to the spot where she had secretly taken photos of me in her previous life. This time, I took a photo of her profile instead. On the back of the photo, I wrote, "Even if time and space intertwine, the one by my side is still you." Willow was a bit puzzled when she saw it and said that since we were already together, why bother taking secret photos? I gently kissed her lips and told her this was proof that I had loved her across 2 lifetimes. The day before graduation, Willow and I went to the small forest on campus that she had said was her favorite when we first arrived at the university. Both of us wore our graduation gowns. After setting up the camera, I wrapped an arm around Willow and stood beneath the trees, leaving behind this graduation photo that had been delayed by an entire lifetime. After graduation, I asked my family for a sum of startup capital and opened a company near the university. With experience from my previous life, the company's operations were extremely stable. Because Willow was a graduate student, I applied to the university for family accompaniment status. As a result, the two of us continued living in the same 1-bedroom apartment we had rented during our undergraduate years. I planned that once Willow finished graduate school, I would continue renting this place. It held all the beautiful memories of our youth. 1 month after college graduation, Willow unexpectedly became pregnant. Thinking back to the night of our graduation, I had been drunk beyond measure. When I woke up the next morning, I was in our rented apartment. The two of us were holding each other, completely unclothed. Seeing the marks on the bed sheets, we both understood that the final barrier had been broken. That night, Willow hadn't drunk much. After she helped me back to the apartment, I pushed her beneath me and kissed her lips. At first, Willow resisted a little, telling me that we hadn't held a wedding yet. But under the influence of alcohol, my emotions were in turmoil. The woman I loved most was right beneath me, and I ignored her words. In the end, Willow was moved by my kisses as well. Overcome with emotion, she took the initiative to remove her clothes. Chapter 17. I never expected that just 1 month later, Willow would be pregnant with my child, the result of that one night. After my 22nd birthday, I took Willow to the civil affairs office to register our marriage. I told her that once she graduated, I would give her a grand wedding. With a child on the way, we couldn't keep living on campus. So I bought a house and a car just outside the south gate of University B. My company was only 5 kilometers away from University B. Just a short drive. Willow and I had both gotten our driver's licenses back in sophomore year. At first, Willow continued working at the company on weekdays and attended graduate classes on weekends. As her pregnancy progressed, for the sake of the baby, she applied for a 1-year leave of absence. However, her advisor rejected the request and instead allowed her to continue her graduate studies from home, without needing to come to campus. I hired the best nanny to take care of Willow. Every evening, as soon as I finished work, I would come home to be with her. Even when I had social obligations, I always reported them to Willow beforehand, giving her a strong sense of security. In the late spring of the following year, Willow gave birth to a son for me. I named him Nathan. Nathan, this entire lifetime was a gift from heaven. After Willow finished her postnatal recovery, she gradually returned to her former routine. Her advisor had already taken great care of her during her undergraduate years. Knowing Willow's situation, she allowed Willow to continue attending classes remotely so she could more easily care for the baby. Every night, Willow insisted on soothing the baby to sleep herself. When I saw the dark circles under her eyes, my heart ached. She would always comfort me instead, telling me not to worry about home and to focus on handling company matters. Even so, I still hired a nanny to help Willow share part of the burden. 2 years later, Willow completed her master's degree. Her advisor then helped her apply for an in-service doctoral program. By that time, my company had already begun to take shape, and I generously invested a large sum of money into her advisor's research team. On Willow's 26th birthday, we finally held a grand wedding ceremony. My parents, though very reluctant, still attended my wedding. Willow's advisor attended as her family representative on the bride's side. At the wedding, I saw Sophia and Makoto again after a long time. The once inseparable couple had become a married pair who could barely stand the sight of each other. Maria, Simon, and others I deeply disliked also attended out of courtesy. I sent invitations to acquaintances from University B. Most of them were still in City A, so they took a day off to attend my wedding. Before the ceremony began, Sophia came to find me. "George, I need to step out for a moment. You two talk, Willow said in front of Sophia. She kissed my lips, clearly asserting her claim. Without sparing Sophia a glance, she walked out of the room. Speak. What is it? I looked at Sophia coldly. Thinking of what she and Makoto had done in my previous life filled me with anger. George. She stepped forward, trying to grab my hand, but I dodged. Show some respect. If you have something to say it. Don't touch me. George, are you really going to marry Willow? Sophia looked at me with grievance. What's so good about her? If you married me, you'd gain more resources and even reclaim the Wong family inheritance. Sophia, is something wrong with your brain? I almost laughed in anger. Trash like you thinks you can compare yourself to Willow. I feel secondhand insulted on Willow's behalf. Don't ever bother me again. I love Willow. With that, I walked to the door, opened it, and caught Willow, who had been eavesdropping with her ear pressed to the door, just as she nearly stumbled. Willow, I kissed her cheek gently. If you're worried, you don't have to force yourself. My eyes and my heart hold only you. Sophia looked at us, so openly affectionate, her eyes reddening. Without saying a word, she turned and left. I didn't see her again for the rest of the wedding. She was probably hiding somewhere, crying over her miserable marriage. But what did that have to do with me? In my eyes, there was only Willow. I raised a glass to Willow's advisor, thanking her for taking care of us over the past 8 years. Chapter 18. 2 months later, the Wong family collapsed. My parents and Jack Wong were all taken away. Since I had already completely severed ties with the Wong family long ago, none of it implicated me. The fallout also affected the Ito family, the Kim family, the Lin family, the Law family, and several other family-owned companies. Naturally, my hand was involved in this. What Makoto, Sophia Kim, Maria Lin, Simon Law, and the others had done to Willow and me in my previous life, I made them repay it with interest. What surprised me even more was that many clients who had previously worked with the Wong family came looking for me instead, hoping to cooperate. I accepted every one of them without hesitation. When Willow looked through the proposals on my computer, she couldn't stop clicking her tongue in amazement. I told her calmly, "These are all your ideas. I just helped you record them." Every time, Willow would simply smile without saying anything. I knew she thought I was paving the road for her future. 4 years later, Willow completed her doctorate with her advisor's recommendation. She successfully stayed on at University B and became a university lecturer. At University B, Willow had entered as an undergraduate at 17 and graduated with her PhD at 29, 12 full years of her life spent there. In this life, I made sure to take Willow for annual health checkups. Her body showed no major problems. A little over 2 months later, on Willow's 30th birthday, I invited many close friends and business partners to celebrate with her. After the banquet ended, I held Willow tightly in my arms. In my previous life, she had passed away on her 30th birthday, but in this life, our fate had been completely rewritten. Early the next morning, as soon as I opened my eyes, I saw Willow staring at me. "What's wrong, Willow?" I gently pulled her into my arms. "Nothing," she said softly, lifting her eyes to me. "I just had a nightmare, a very real one." "It's okay," I murmured, lightly patting her back. "Dreams aren't real." Willow wrapped her arms around my waist and leaned obediently against me, not resisting at all. I looked at the woman in my arms and smiled faintly. In my previous life, when Willow was 30, illness had ravaged her body, her face hollowed, her eyes sunken, her frame reduced to skin and bones. In this life, at 30, time had left barely a trace on her face. Even though she had given birth once, her beauty hadn't diminished at all. Living a happy, peaceful life, she looked as radiant as a woman in her early 20s, glowing with vitality. I drove her to University B. Today was the day she would teach her very first class. I told her not to be nervous and to believe in herself. Even back in high school, Willow's teaching ability had been exceptional. Now that she was a PhD holder, she was naturally even more capable. In the brief moment while I went to lock the car, a few young boys mistook Willow for a current student and tried to ask for her contact information. I felt displeased, but when I heard Willow's response, I couldn't help laughing. She was now fully able to handle the world on her own. "How old are you?" Willow asked calmly. "I'm 19. One of the boys said eagerly. "What about you, miss?" "Little brother," Willow replied with an amused smile. "I'm already 30. My child is in elementary school. Do you still want my contact information?" The boy immediately ran off. Judging by his reaction, he probably wouldn't dare flirt again anytime soon. The others scattered as well, likely all traumatized. "I really need to hold onto you tight." I walked over, wrapped an arm around Willow's slender waist, and whispered by her ear, "George." Willow glanced at me with a laugh. "Our child can already run errands. What are you still worried about?" Chapter 19. As soon as I walked into the classroom, I saw the boy who had just asked Willow for her WeChat ID sitting right in the front row. When he saw Willow, he was clearly stunned. I helped Willow put her things away, then stepped out of the classroom. I could already imagine how awkward his future classes were going to be. After class, Willow drove straight to the company and happily told me about what had just happened during her lecture. "Willow, this is the assistant I hired for you. Her name is Lisa. From now on, if you have anything you need, just go to her." I had deliberately found Lisa, Willow's assistant from her previous life. Back then, she had been the only outsider who was truly loyal to Willow. Lisa was also a graduate of University B. She had finished her undergraduate degree 4 years earlier but never landed a particularly good job. She had a simple mind. Whoever treated her well, she would repay tenfold. I was deeply grateful for what Lisa had done in my previous life, so I offered her a 5-figure monthly salary along with exceptionally generous benefits. "Hello, Ms. Liu. My name is Lisa," she said, bowing slightly. Willow smiled and nodded, gesturing for her to sit. With Lisa by her side, Willow's workload clearly lightened. I encouraged her to apply for professional titles. After all, the company's operations themselves were already an excellent resume. 3 years later, Willow became pregnant again. That December, she gave birth to a pair of twin daughters. Thinking of Jessica from my previous life, I decided that both girls would take Willow's surname, and their names would be chosen by Willow. Willow named the older sister Bella Liu and the younger one Lily Liu. Nathan was already 10 years old and very sensible. Not only did he excel academically, but he also helped Willow take care of his younger sisters at home. Many people envied me, saying I had achieved both career success and love. Not only had my company grown larger and stronger, but my family life was also harmonious and happy. A wife who was beautiful, capable, and kind, and 3 lovely children we had raised together. After marriage, I gave Willow a strong sense of security. Whenever I went anywhere, I would report it to her. Even though she always said she trusted me and that there was no need to do so, I never stopped. In December of the year I turned 35, my parents were released early from prison due to good behavior. Willow bore no grudges. She arranged a home for them and even assigned people to take care of their daily needs. My parents felt deeply guilty about how they had belittled Willow in the past and kept apologizing to her. Willow only smiled and said that what was past should be left in the past. I was deeply moved. I had been wondering how to talk to Willow about this matter. Although I had always stood firmly on her side, my parents' earlier rejection of her would inevitably have left a thorn in her heart, especially back then, when Willow's inner world had not yet fully opened. Willow wrapped her arms around my neck and smiled. "George, I love you. I don't want you to be caught in the middle between me and your parents. If I were 25, I definitely wouldn't have let it go so easily. But at 35, after experiencing so many things, I've learned to see many matters more lightly, and I can understand your parents' mindset back then." I kissed Willow's soft red lips. How incredibly fortunate I was to be able to marry a virtuous wife like Willow. Chapter 20. In April of the following year, Jack was also released early due to good behavior. After his release, he came to my company looking for me, hoping I would take in his now homeless self. I directly had security stop him at the front gate. As early as my undergraduate years, I had already made up my mind. I would definitely support my parents. But as for Jack, he could go wherever was far away and cool. When begging me failed, Jack actually went to University B to look for Willow. At that time, Willow had just been promoted to associate professor because her teaching level was exceptionally high and she had continued producing patented research results. Her advisor gave her the only available slot. Willow was also extremely popular with students. Coupled with how well she took care of herself, many students affectionately called her the most beautiful goddess big sister. What was even more surprising was that the student who had once asked Willow for her WeChat ID had become the very first graduate student under her supervision. When Willow saw Jack, she didn't recognize him at first. It wasn't until Jack called her sister-in-law that Willow realized who he was. She immediately called me and told me about it. Hearing this made me furious. I felt that if we didn't deal with it properly, Jack would probably keep harassing us endlessly. But Willow told me not to worry. She said she would handle it. Even so, I immediately drove to University B. Jack was truly disgusting. By the time I arrived at Willow's office, Jack was no longer there. Willow told me that she had given Jack 1 million yuan and sent him to live in country H, on the condition that he would never return to the country and would never again appear in our lives. I felt that giving Jack that money was truly a waste, but if it could buy us peace and quiet, then it was worth it. That evening, Willow and I went together to eat dinner at University B's first cafeteria. Back when we were still undergraduates, we loved eating at the first cafeteria. Now that Willow was a teacher here, we could eat there every day. Looking at the woman across from me gazing at me with such tenderness, my mood lifted instantly. As long as I could spend my life with Willow, nothing else truly mattered. People say, 1 year of passion, 3 years of pain, 5 years of separation, 7 years of itch, 10 years of promise. But we had already been together for 20 years. We had never had a real argument. Even when we disagreed, we always spoke calmly and rationally with each other. Our love was still just as it had been back then. From 15 to 35, 20 years of time, through storms and sunshine, supporting each other every step of the way. All that remained were sweet memories. George's inner monologue. Willow, even if the entire world were filled with malice toward you, leaving no light at all in your inner world, I would still stand behind you with everything I have, becoming the guiding light in your pitch-black world. If one more step forward would lead you into a bottomless abyss, where falling in would mean eternal ruin, then I would spare no cost to pull you back. I am willing to wait, for the layers of cold ice deep within your heart to slowly thaw, for you to gradually accept the kindness I offer you, just as you did in my previous life, bringing me salvation when I was about to fall into the abyss myself. I am truly happy that in this life, I get to grow old with you and that we did not waste the second chance heaven gave us. Willow, I love you, forever. Chapter Willow, Side Story. My name is Willow. I once had a very happy family, but when I was 10 years old, my parents tragically passed away in a plane crash. In an instant, I lost everything I depended on. Fortunately, the government arranged for me to live in a place specifically for orphans like me and waived all my tuition fees up until I graduated from high school. That was the only reason I didn't end up on the streets and was still able to continue my education. From that moment on, I studied even harder, determined to rely on myself one day to build a future. However, because I grew up without my parents, my personality became increasingly withdrawn. Throughout all of middle school, I was the main target of bullying by the school delinquents. I ignored them and buried myself in my studies. The middle school teachers were extremely snobbish. Once they found out I was an orphan and realized there was nothing to gain from me, they shoved me straight into the last row and left me to fend for myself. Even though my grades were always in the top 3 of the class, the teachers never spared me a second glance. Aside from me, the last row was filled with small-time troublemakers who were only there to get a middle school diploma. The one person who studied seriously, me, ended up being the odd one out, pouring water into my backpack, throwing away my stationery. These things were everyday occurrences. I didn't dare resist, because I knew that if I showed even the slightest disobedience, the bullying would only become more vicious. The girls who lived in the same room as me were 3 or 4 years older than I was. They didn't want to talk to me at all. I think it was because of that period of my life that even later, after I opened up emotionally, got married, and had children, I would still instinctively look at street thugs with disgust whenever I saw them. They are parasites of society. Up until my first year of high school, I didn't have a single friend. I didn't even go to take my middle school graduation photo. Every night, I would cry quietly under my blanket. That was my only outlet. I couldn't understand why, when I hadn't done anything wrong, life still had to put me through so much suffering. During those 3 years, I was deeply grateful to the cafeteria auntie who served food. Seeing how pitiful I was, she would always give me an extra half scoop of rice and occasionally add some meat dishes for free. When I grew up and became a university teacher, I repaid that kindness by taking special care of her granddaughter. Later, with a top 30 ranking citywide, I was admitted to the best high school. I had thought that since everyone there was academically strong, we would all just focus on studying. But some wealthy families spent huge sums of money to send their children, who had no interest in learning, into a place meant for studying. And those people chose me, the quiet and withdrawn one, as their target for bullying. Still, I fell in love with a boy at first sight. His name was George. I ranked first in the class, and George ranked 8th, but we ultimately lived in 2 different worlds. All I could do was hide my feelings in my heart and quietly pay attention to him. In high school, no one was willing to sit next to me. I didn't like talking, and on top of that, those delinquents spread rumors that I was a jinx, that anyone who got close to me would have bad luck. Naturally, no one wanted to be my friend. Years later, when I look back on that time, I don't resent the classmates who stayed away from me after hearing those rumors. If I were in their place, I probably would have done the same. Back then, none of us were mature enough. On September 11th, those delinquents threw George a birthday celebration. That was when I learned our birthdays were only 2 days apart. Mine was September 9th. But I hadn't celebrated my birthday in a long time. In fact, aside from myself, no one even knew when my birthday was. Those delinquents were extremely deferential to George. No one dared to go against anything he said. George never bullied me, but he also never stopped the delinquents from bullying me. Did I resent George? The answer was obvious. I never did. We weren't related, nor were we close. Why should he make his friends uncomfortable just for my sake? At the end of the first semester of freshman year, I still ranked first in the class, while George dropped to somewhere in the 50s. That made me feel a little disappointed. But then I thought about it. His family was so wealthy. I only had studying to rely on. Maybe that was the only way I could ever reach the height they built with money. In the second semester of freshman year, during the second week after school started, I was eating alone in the cafeteria. The high school had more than 6 times the number of students compared to middle school. Even if the cafeteria staff were kind, They couldn't possibly remember me anymore. Every day, I could only eat 40 cents worth of plain rice, along with free pickled vegetables and brine. Fortunately, high school teachers weren't as snobbish as my middle school teachers and treated me much better. I listened to the delinquents talking about me behind my back, and my heart felt unbearably heavy. Just then, I heard Sophia's voice. "Young Master Wong, go eat the pickled vegetables from that disaster bringer's tray." Immediately after, Makoto chimed in. "Young Master Wong, hurry up. What, are you scared to play along?" After hearing that, I forced myself to hold back my tears and continued eating my meal, pretending not to hear them. What I never expected was that George actually picked up his tray and sat down beside me. To my shock, he took the chopsticks from my hand, picked up a piece of pickled radish, and, right in front of my stunned and furious eyes, put it into his mouth. I could see his facial features twist slightly. After all, that pickled radish was unbearably salty, and he was eating it plain. "Willow, this has no nutrition at all. Eat some meat," George said, as he transferred all the meat from his plate onto mine. At that moment, I thought George was humiliating me. Being treated like this by the person I liked, I completely lost control of my anger. I grabbed the bowl and splashed all the pickled vegetable soup onto George's face. Then I burst into tears and ran out of the cafeteria. I found a patch of bushes, leaned against a thick tree, and cried my heart out. Only when the preparatory bell rang did I return to the classroom, completely dazed. I didn't hear a single word the teacher said that period. I just barely managed to stop myself from crying again. As soon as class ended, George came up to me. I thought he was going to hit me, so I hurriedly apologized. But instead, he apologized to me, and even asked me to tutor him academically. It would be a lie to say I wasn't happy, but I remembered that he seemed to have fallen out with Sophia recently, and Sophia hated me the most. I assumed he was only getting close to me to spite her, so I rejected him. George didn't get angry. He gave me a piece of dark chocolate, clearly very expensive. Over the following week, he gave me one every day. I didn't eat any of them. I placed them all on the windowsill. That afternoon after school, I saw Sophia holding him. I realized my guess had been right, and a trace of disappointment flashed through my heart. I walked around them and headed toward the stairwell. Just then, I heard Sophia scream. I was about to turn around when George grabbed my arm first, explained himself to me, and said he genuinely wanted to help me. I immediately pulled my sleeve free and walked away quickly, unwilling to stay even 1 second longer. Yet the moment I turned around, my tears betrayed me and fell anyway. I never imagined that the very next day, George would apply to the teacher to sit with me. When I saw him smile at me, my heart softened for just a moment, but soon after, I shut myself off again. I told George, "I hate you." I don't know if it was my imagination, but I thought I saw disappointment in his eyes. During the month we sat together, George completely cut ties with that group of delinquents. He genuinely started studying hard and often asked me questions. At first, I was still very cold toward him, but even I didn't realize that, little by little, my attitude toward George was becoming gentler. George followed me after school every day, only leaving once he saw me return to my place. After a month, I finally couldn't hold it in anymore. I asked George how long he planned to keep playing with me. George said he wasn't playing with me at all, that he had always liked me. A ripple stirred in my heart, but reason quickly took over. George asked me what it would take for me to believe him, wanting him to give up sooner. I told him to kneel. After saying that, I turned and walked away, because I was convinced he was just acting out of anger towards Sophia. I never believed he would actually kneel, but when I heard the dull thud behind me, my whole body froze. When I turned around, I saw George truly kneeling there, looking at me with nothing but sincerity in his eyes. In that instant, my mind went completely blank. I rushed over to help him up, and George seized the chance to wrap his arms around my waist, refusing to let go, making my cheeks burn red. From that moment on, I believed that George wasn't doing this to spite Sophia. Although we hadn't officially started dating back then, our relationship grew closer and closer. Little by little, I loosened the lock around my heart and began to let George in. I could feel it. The heart that had been frozen solid for 5 years was finally beginning to thaw. George really had fallen behind in his classes, so every day I tutored him. In return, George wouldn't let me eat at the cafeteria anymore. Every day he brought me all kinds of food, mostly lamb. I had no idea how George even knew that I liked lamb. By the end of the first year final exams, George's ranking had risen to the 20s. I was genuinely happy for him. During summer vacation, George often asked me out for walks. It was the first time anyone had ever invited me like that, so I didn't refuse. 1 week before the new semester started, we ran into Sophia and the others while we were out walking. George stood up for me, talked back at them, and then pulled me away. That was when I finally asked the question I had wanted to ask for a long time. "Why are you being so good to me?" George said, "You once said that if there were a next life, could you look at me one more time?" Of course I didn't believe him. Not long after we parted, Sophia and the others dragged me into the woods. Makoto and Simon held me down while Sophia and Maria slapped my face again and again. I clenched my teeth and endured the pain, refusing to beg them. Then George arrived and beat Sophia, Maria, and Makoto badly. Afraid that things would spiral out of control, I grabbed George's wrist and shook my head at him. George understood what I meant. He scooped me up in his arms, and I instinctively wrapped my arms around his neck. On the way, George kept apologizing nonstop. I kept comforting him, telling him that I had never blamed him. When we got back to where I lived, I found out that the place was actually invested in by Sophia's family. I was kicked out, and George took me to his home instead. On my 16th birthday, George bought me a mobile phone. I didn't know the exact price, but I knew it must be very expensive, so I refused it at first. In the end, George said I could just treat it as something he was lending me. The next day, he took me to get a SIM card and helped me register accounts on various messaging apps. Over the next 2 years, Sophia and the others rarely appeared in my life. Meanwhile, my relationship with George grew closer and closer. He liked holding my hand during class. At first, I truly wasn't used to it, but once I got used to it, whenever I wasn't taking notes, I would take the initiative to place my hand into George's. I could feel it. A seed of love was quietly taking root in our hearts, destined to bloom and bear fruit in the future. Many classmates asked to borrow my notes, but I refused them all. My notes were for me and George only. Letting outsiders see them would just be aiding the enemy. After the English exam and the college entrance examination, George confessed to me. I cried as I threw myself into his arms, officially confirming our relationship. It was something that the me from 3 years ago could only dream of. At high school graduation, George's parents came to attend the ceremony. They were very dissatisfied with me, but George still insisted on being with me. My exam score was 30 points higher than George's. I successfully got into University B's flagship major, Strategic Finance, as an A-track admit, while George was admitted to the same major as a B-track student. On the day we registered, we discovered that we had been assigned to the same class. George was overjoyed and suggested that we live together starting in October. I hesitated for a moment, but in the end, I agreed. He also asked me to join a student club. George said that after entering university, I couldn't just study endlessly like in high school. I needed some social interaction as well. That was how I became good friends with several new club members. I remember the second Saturday of September. The academic advisor called me into her office and told me that a monthly, need-based grant of 5,000 yuan would be transferred to my account on time, and that the Orphan Support Association had also paid all 4 years of my tuition. I was shocked, but I quickly guessed the truth. George didn't want to hurt my pride, so he helped me in this indirect way. Now, the money I had each month was almost more than what I used to have in an entire year. I didn't have the habit of spending lavishly. I saved the money, and on every special holiday, I carefully prepared gifts for George. One time, when we were eating at the cafeteria, George told me to wait while he went to line up to buy breakfast. A boy came up and asked for my contact information. I refused and pointed at George, who was lining up not far away, telling him, "That's my boyfriend, and the person I love most." At a sophomore year club gathering, someone asked who had fallen for whom first between George and me. I openly admitted that I was the one who liked George first. Later, during Truth or Dare, George kissed me in front of everyone. I remember feeling like my face must have been burning red at the time. The 4 years of university passed in the blink of an eye. In my senior year, I was admitted to the graduate program at my own university. My advisor was Professor Shen, who had taken great care of me during my undergraduate years. She had been through a failed marriage and had no children of her own, and she seemed to treat me as if I were her biological daughter. My score was high enough for a full-time master's program, but George told me he wanted to start a business and that this was not a time when he could be left alone. So in the end, I applied for a part-time master's program instead. On the day of our university graduation, I didn't know why George insisted on taking me to the south gate to take photos. He took a picture of my profile. It looked just like a candid shot. On the back, George wrote, "Even if time and space intertwine, the one by my side is still you." That night, George drank himself completely drunk with his friends. After we returned to the rented apartment, he suddenly pressed me beneath him. Feeling his burning breath, I understood what he wanted to do. Originally, I had wanted to wait until our wedding day, but after being kissed by him again and again, I was overwhelmed by emotion and gave myself to him. The next day, I didn't feel nervous at all. On the contrary, I felt incredibly happy. I finally belonged to George completely. A month later, I became pregnant. At first, I wanted to apply for a 1-year leave of absence, but my advisor told me I could study remotely from home and didn't need to delay my studies. Right after George turned 22, he took me to the civil affairs office to register our marriage, holding the marriage certificate in my hands. Everything felt unreal. When I was 15, I never imagined that I would one day end up with George. The following year, Our child was born. George named him Nathan. We finally had a baby of our own. George sent me a document and told me that everything inside it was my ideas. He had only helped record them. Later on, all of the plans in that document were put to use. 2 years later, I completed my master's degree, and my advisor helped me apply for an in-service PhD program. On my 26th birthday, George and I held a grand wedding. George's parents, as well as Sophia, Maria, Makoto, Simon, and others, all attended. Sophia even came backstage to look for George. I wanted him to handle it himself, so I stepped outside, but I still couldn't help pressing my ear to the door to eavesdrop. George told Sophia that the only person he loved was me. He seemed to know I was listening. When he opened the door, I stumbled straight into his arms. The wedding went very smoothly, and we received blessings from most of the people present. 2 months later, the Wang family collapsed, but George Wang was not implicated at all. Before my 30th birthday, I finally completed my PhD with my advisor's recommendation. I stayed at the university and became a university lecturer. I couldn't bear to see my advisor living alone, so I acknowledged her as my godmother. I never expected that on my very first day of teaching, someone would ask for my WeChat ID, probably thinking I was a student. It was honestly ridiculous. Even more absurd was the fact that that boy turned out to be my own student. Such a melodramatic thing actually happened to me. However, the boy really was excellent academically, so I made him my class representative. His name was David, and he would also become my first master's student in the future. On my 30th birthday, George was exceptionally happy. He invited almost all of our friends and business partners to celebrate my birthday with me. That night, I had a dream. It felt like a story George had once told me. In the dream, I saw that on that day, George didn't eat the pickled vegetables at all. Instead, he threw them onto the ground. I saw myself working part-time in university to earn tuition money, being drugged by Sophia, assaulted by Makoto, and becoming pregnant as a result. The school used money to hush everything up. On graduation day, I secretly took photos of George at the South Gate, just like how George took photos of me in this lifetime. After graduation, I had no choice but to start a business while raising a child, surviving on pickled vegetables every day, eventually developing a severe addiction to cigarettes and alcohol. Later on, the Wang group went bankrupt. George Wang ended up wandering the streets. I took him back to my villa, gave him resources, and helped him rise again. But even though we lived in the same house, it felt as though a galaxy lay between us. On my 30th birthday, I died from multiple organ failure caused by years of overwork. Because of my dying wish, George raised my daughter, Jessica, to adulthood. But by the time George was 45, his appearance looked like that of a man in his 70s. That same year, due to long-term emotional depression and overwork, George fell seriously ill. With Jessica already married and settled, he seemed to have no remaining attachments. At the end of that year, he passed away quietly. At that point, I jolted awake from the dream, my entire body drenched in cold sweat. George was holding my waist, sleeping soundly. I felt that this might not have been just a dream. Perhaps this was our previous life. George's rebirth must have happened right before that moment in the cafeteria, before he ate the pickled radish from my tray. From that point on, 2 completely different lives branched off. Looking at George now, so many things suddenly made sense. Why? From the very beginning, there had been such an overwhelming surge of love in his eyes when he looked at me, and why the plans he gave me were always so far ahead of their time. The secretary George found for me was Lisa, the same Lisa who had been the most loyal person to me in my previous life. I leaned over and placed a kiss on George's face. No matter how the previous life had been, in this one, we were deeply in love. After that, I didn't fall back asleep. I simply lay there quietly, watching George. When I was 33, I became pregnant again. By the end of that year, I safely gave birth to a pair of twin daughters. George let me choose their names and also let them take my surname. I named the older sister Bella and the younger one Lily. Nathan was very sensible. Whenever George and I were busy, he would help the nanny soothe his 2 younger sisters to sleep. In the year George turned 35, his parents and his younger brother Jack were released from prison one after another. I arranged for people to take care of George's parents. They had once disliked me deeply, but I didn't want George to be caught in the middle, torn between both sides. Besides, by now, I had already let many things go and could even somewhat understand their mindset back then. As for Jack, when he came looking for me, I had just been promoted to associate professor. I had returned to my office and was about to call George to share the good news when Jack showed up. At first, I didn't recognize him. It wasn't until he called me sister-in-law that I realized he was George's younger brother. I called George immediately. When George heard that Jack had actually gone to find me, he was furious and said he was coming over right away. Even though I told him I could handle it myself, George still insisted on coming. Looking at Jack, I knew that if I didn't give him money, He would keep causing trouble, so I gave him 1 million and told him to go to country H and never come back. At first, Jack complained that it wasn't enough. I told him calmly that if his brother showed up, he wouldn't get a cent and would probably get beaten as well. Only then did Jack grab the bank card and flee in a panic. 5 minutes later, George stormed into my office in a rage. When he didn't see Jack, I told him what had happened. George sighed and said we should just treat it as buying ourselves some peace and quiet. I then told George the good news about my promotion to associate professor. Seeing the smile on his face, I felt deeply satisfied. This was a life I never would have dared to imagine as a child. I was finally able to formally supervise master's students. David became my first master's student because he had taken a year off in the middle of his studies. The timing worked out perfectly for him to become my first graduate advisee. Although my ability was more than sufficient to supervise doctoral students, my seniority wasn't quite there yet. By then, my advisor had become the dean, and the doctoral students she recruited were all assigned to me. 4 months before my 40th birthday, I was finally promoted to full professor and also became a vice dean. At last, I could recruit my own PhD students. That same year, my son Nathan successfully gained admission to University B's Strategic Finance program as an A-track student. I was overjoyed. My advisor even chartered an entire cruise ship to celebrate for Nathan and me. She had already come to treat Nathan like her own grandson. During the banquet, I went out onto the deck to get some fresh air and noticed a service attendant who looked to be around 60, staring at me intently. Just as I was about to speak, she called out my name in a hoarse voice. Willow. I was startled and asked, "Excuse me, ma'am, do we know each other?" At the word ma'am, the elderly woman clearly became furious and shouted at me. "I'm Sophia. Why is it that we're about the same age, yet you're still so young and beautiful, while I'm already old and withered?" It took me a moment to remember the name, Sophia, the person who had bullied me in high school and who had always seemed to like George, but by now, I had long since let everything go. I didn't respond to Sophia at all, not even a single word, and simply turned and walked back into the cabin. Because of the psychological trauma from middle school, even after more than 20 years, I still deeply detest street thugs. That night, I heard from the crew that Sophia had jumped into the sea and taken her own life. Makoto and Maria were released from prison 2 years ago, only to be taken away by enemies soon after, to somewhere unknown. Simon got involved in gang fights while in prison. He'll probably never get out for the rest of his life. I told George about Sophia. He clearly thought for a long time before he even seemed to remember who Sophia was. In the end, he only said calmly that people like her weren't worth any sympathy. David has also secured the opportunity to stay on at the university, on the condition that he successfully completes his PhD. He has already married the woman he loves, and I've handed some of my courses over to him to teach. My advisor has entered semi-retirement. Most administrative matters are now handled by me, the vice dean. After the semester started in September, I brought Nathan to the apartment where George and I had lived together back in college. Looking at the familiar furnishings inside, it was hard to believe that more than 20 years had passed and that we were already well into middle age. Yet I felt as though George and I had only just moved in together yesterday. I told Nathan stories about George and me during our university days. Nathan listened with great envy and asked me, "Mom, will I also be able to find a girl one day, someone who loves me the way you love Dad?" I gently pulled him into my arms. "You will, Nathan, believe me.